Hey everyone, I'm Koala. On screen you see my current main character, Madaya, a Night Elf bear tank. As you see, I'm one of the highest rated Mythic Plus bears out there at the moment. But I'm not showing you this to flex my score, rather, I'd like to establish some credibility for today's topic. So, it's widely known that the Guardian specialization has some problems right now, and very few people actually play the spec right now, especially on high keys. Mainly, that's because we don't have consistent ways to deal with the plethora of magic damage tank busters in the current season. But in my opinion, the problems with the spec are more deeply rooted than that. In the Capstone area of our talent tree, generally we have way too many talent points to choose from. There's 20 possible points to invest in. Comparing that to a protection warrior, they only have 14 points. And also in the Capstone area, we are forced to pick our main rage generators, Galactic Guardian with Twin Moonfire, as well as Blood Frenzy. Comparing that to warriors again, they have their main rage generators in the middle section of their tree. And overall, there's just so many talents that are weak and feel weird to pick up, but we have to pick them up in order to get the talents that we actually want. So today I'll be talking about ideas to fix these problems. For that, I've went over the entire Guardian specialization tree and have redesigned it, mostly with stuff that's already in the game or has been in the game in the past. I've also intentionally kept the structure of the tree pretty much the same. Let's look at it. As baseline changes for the specialization, I would like to see infected wounds being baseline. Um, Now this is fairly decent talent. It was baseline in the past in Shadowlands, but really it's unlikely that we'll ever pick this up if we have the choice, as there's just way too many other strong choices. And without it, we don't really have a slow, other than maybe Ursul's Vortex every minute. But it would be nice to have a permanent slow again. So I would remove this node and make it baseline. And what I'd also like to see baseline is Frenzied Regeneration having 2 charges again. Currently this is in the talent Innate Resolve, granting Frenzied Regeneration an additional charge. But this charge was baseline in the past and I'd like to see it baseline again. So let's start at the top of the tree. Maul has stayed pretty much the same. Gore is also the same. And for Survival Instincts we have a minor change. Currently you have to pick up Survival Instincts using 2 talents. So 1 to pick up the spell itself and 1 more talent point to pick up 2 charges. And again, this was baseline in the past, so I'd like to see these 2 charges in just 1 talent point again. Then we have this talent, Front of the Pack, that nobody uses. It's really not great, and I don't see this ever being picked up unless just for fun. So instead of that, I'd like to see Freedom of the Herd, which is a PvP talent. And it clears all roots and snares from yourself and allies. So this could help in situations where, for example, in court on the first boss, everybody gets the debuff where you have to jump. Or as a druid, you could pick this talent for the dungeon and you could remove the snare instantly with a 1-minute cooldown from everyone. This choice node, I've done some bigger changes to it. For Brambles, you see that I've redesigned it a little bit. First of all, I've doubled the strength of it. Instead of attack power times 0.06, it's now times 0.12. And instead of this weird effect that while Barkskin is active, the Brambles like spike out from you and deal damage every 1 second, now It just triples the effect while Barkskin is active, causing us to absorb and reflect even more damage during Barkskin, which I think is far more intuitive. It also removes some problems with us accidentally ninja pulling neutral mobs, as we have Barkskin up from the previous pull and are running next to them. So overall, this should be a change to make Brambles more fun, more intuitive. But it doesn't really change it a lot. Instead of Bristling Fur, which is a fairly old and unintuitive talent that really nobody likes to use that much, especially as it's not off the global cooldown. So it would be better to, in my opinion, just remove this and instead replace it with an ability that would actually feel cool to press, which is Thorns. So what I've done is just copy the text from the Balance PvP talent and inserted it here. This already exists in the game. I think it would be a very cool spell to have for a bear tank. Just really, you know, make enemies kill themselves as they hit you. It's a fantasy that's currently not really in the game, so it would be cool to see. And also this would be very interesting for a raid, as even when you're off tanking, you can give this to the primary tank in order to deal some extra damage, as they are taking a lot of damage. Then moving on to the right side, we have Mangle. So I've combined this Mangle with the Soul of the Forest talent pretty much. So against bleeding targets, my Mangle should generate 5 more rage and deal 25% additional damage. And with that, I will completely change Soul of the Forest to something else further below and put it all in this one node here. Then, instead of the improved survival instincts giving us 2 charges, I've moved up Gory Fur that we have here. And Gory Fur I've redesigned completely, as it's fairly weird to use right now. It's a small chance to reduce the rage cost of our next Iron Fur by 25%, essentially reducing Iron Fur to 30 rage instead of 40, or during Incarn to 15 rage instead of 20. And this really isn't great for our After the Wildfire, since with After the Wildfire we rely on every 200 rage that we spend to proc a big AoE heal for everyone. Now, if there's 40 rage left for us to heal the group, then we currently never know for sure unless we track this Gory Fur buff, that is otherwise not relevant to track at all. But unless we track it, we don't know whether our next Iron Fur will cost 30 or 40 rage. So if we had 40 rage left until the proc, we can either proc it or not. And that's very bad. Imagine there's a huge AoE going off and you're preparing your Iron Fur to proc after the Wildfire right after the AoE, and then you suddenly have a Gory Fur proc, and you're not gonna get the huge AoE heal. Instead, you're gonna be sitting at 10 rage left to proc after the Wildfire, and your party is dying. So really, this talent is very counterintuitive. It currently is even worse to pick up than if we wouldn't have it at all. It's a terrible talent. But we have to pick it up in order to even get to After the Wildfire. Currently. So I've moved it up to the improved survival instincts and redesigned it to remove this weird, unintuitive aspect and interaction with After the Wildfire. So what it does now is that if you press Mangle, you have a small chance to instantly just gain a stack of Iron Fur. Just for free, you gain a stack of Iron Fur, and you're happy. Then, where Gory Fur was previously, I've put Ursoc's Endurance, and I've combined Ursoc's Endurance with an aspect of Reinforced Fur that also reduces that also makes Barkskin reduce damage taken by an additional 10%, because the talent in itself would feel a bit underwhelming. And with this aspect added to it, it would feel like a really great talent to pick up. And as such, it's in a great spot to lead down further into the tree. What I forgot to mention on the left side is Innate Resolve. So obviously, as Frenzied Regeneration now has a baseline 2 charges, we are going to need some other effect on this talent to make it worthwhile to pick up. So one thing that's bugging me about bears is that they have some talents in the class tree, like Protector of the Pack or Forest Walk, that really synergize with casting Regrowth, but you can't ever cast Regrowth in combat, as you would have to shift out of bear form. So it would be nice to just sometimes be able to cast Regrowth, or also Entangling Roots for free, since we can't really cast Entangling Roots on mobs in the pool unless we shift out of bear form, which is lethal. So there's really no chance usually to do that. So with this talent, we can gain a free cast of Regrowth or Entangling Roots, with a chance equal to a critical strike chance when we press Frenzied Regeneration. Now, obviously this is quite similar to Dream of Cenarius and how that worked, except that the chance happens when casting Frenzied Regeneration instead of when taking damage. Okay, and then to the biggest rework of this section, Berserk. So, as you see on the tree further down, we don't have any more Berserk nodes. It's just this one Berserk node. In the tree that we currently have, we have to pick up Berserk with 3 talent points, each gaining us some additional bonuses for Berserk. And this is quite bad, honestly, as Berserk is a 3-minute cooldown. It should really just be strong by itself, and we shouldn't have to invest 3 points to make a 3-minute cooldown be strong. So I've combined it all into one node, and I've made some changes to it. Mostly I've removed the Berserk persistence effects. So instead of Frenzied Regeneration reducing our cooldown by 100%, it's only reduced by 50%. That's more than enough. We don't need to be spamming Frenzied Regeneration on every global cooldown. This is fine. It allows us to remove some additional text from the talent, and it's more than strong enough. And what we've also removed is reducing the cost of Iron Fur by 50%. This is because, especially during NoCarn, we will be generating a lot of rage. And if our Iron Fur only costs 20 rage, that means we have to spam the button a whole bunch. And we really don't want this APM heavy sort of gameplay where we have to use a scroll wheel to use Iron Fur. It's better for the spec if Iron Fur just stays at 40 rage, and we'll generate more than enough rage anyways to build many stacks of Iron Fur during Berserk. This really is not necessary, so it's fine if we just remove this Iron Fur cost reduction completely. So to sum up this first section, we have quite a few redesigns or buffs to some talents, and most noticeably there's 2 talents missing. So below Thorns and Brambles we usually have Infected Wounds, that is now just baseline, and below Mangle we would usually have Ursuk's Endurance, that shifted to the right, and Gorifer shifted up, as we have removed the improved survival instincts and also made that baseline. So instead, Mangle now immediately leads to Layered Main, and Thorns/Brambles immediately leads to Vulnerable Flesh. Now, let's look at the middle section of the tree. So in all of these 2-point nodes, I've added some stats to them, as they are not that great talents by themselves, but are 2-point nodes, so it would feel really bad, or it does feel really bad currently, to have to invest 2 points into these talents. But if we just add some stats to them, that will feel much better. So starting on the left side, we have Reinvigoration. This increases our mastery by 2/4%. Now this is obviously more stats than any of these stats, but that's fine because the effect of Frenzied Regeneration's cooldown being reduced is also weaker than all of the other effects. And below that we have Dream of Scenarios, which is a pretty big off-healing talent. It makes it so that Innate Resolve, our talent up here, can now hold up to 2 stacks of the buff and causes our regrowth to heal for an additional 200%. So this is the talent right here, a bit redesigned. This is currently the only way to make our regrowth instant and castable in all forms, and it's not really something that we can pick up in the Capstone area. There's just way too many other good talents in the Capstone area. So it's better if we move this up here, and we completely remove Earth Warden currently, as we don't really need additional protection against auto attacks since we have so much armor from Iron Fur anyways. So we can feel free to completely remove Earth Warden from the spec. And instead, with Dream of Scenarios, this interacts with Innate Resolve in order to grant us some great healing and off-healing, especially when we combine it with Protector of the Pack from the class tree. Then Vicious Cycle has some added text. In principle, it works the same, but it now works off Mangle and Thresh as our rage generators, so that we don't have to feel bad when we have to press Mangle over Thresh when we would really rather be hitting Thresh. So this will feel like a better talent to pick up, and it will be a cornerstone of physical style builds. Then, as our next 2-pointer node, we have Vulnerable Flash. Currently, Vulnerable Flash only increases Maul's critical strike chance. Now, as I've discussed before, we are adding some stats to these 2-pointer nodes, so we are increasing our overall crit chance also by 2 and 4%. And then we have Tooth and Claw, which is in a perfect spot right now, so this has not changed. Then, after picking up one of these 3 talents, we can pick up Flashing Claws here, where one of the Berserk nodes has been. So Flashing Claws is quite a lot stronger than it currently is on live. That's because it feels really underwhelming on live right now to pick it up, and it's a really fun talent that I wish we would be able to pick up more often. So currently on live, you'd have to invest 2 points just to gain a 20% chance to trigger an additional Thresh. Now, with just 1 point here, we immediately get a 25% chance to trigger an additional Thresh. And in order to not make it feel too bad to also press Mangle, we also give Mangle a 25% chance to hit 2 additional targets, or if there's only a single target, to deal 50% increased damage against that single target. Then, going to the other side, to the right side of the tree, we have a layered main redesign. So first of all, obviously we add some stats to it. I've chosen versatility here, since layered main is supposed to make us more tanky and makes our fur stronger, so versatility seems like a good fit here. And it's also been redesigned a bit. So what it does currently is it has a 20% chance to apply 2 stacks of Iron Fur, and also gives our Frenzied Regeneration a 20% chance to not consume a charge. Now, this Frenzied Regeneration chance is not really considered valuable for us at all, and we wouldn't mind to see it gone, so let's remove it, and instead give Iron Fur a chance to refund the rage spent in addition to applying more stacks. So now what this does is it gives us an actual visible indicator when we have benefited from layered main, as currently you wouldn't really notice when you got 2 Iron Fur stacks, but now suddenly whenever you generate 2 stacks instead of 1, you also refund 50% of the rage spent. So you will notice that you have gained some bonus here, which would be very nice. And not only that, obviously that also helps our rage economy, and it doesn't mess with our after the wildfire economy, since it will not reduce our rage spent. We will still be spending 40 rage on Iron Fur, but we will just be refunded 20 rage after that. Below layered main, I have removed reinforced fur, or, well, rather I've combined it. Obviously the bark skin reduce has been combined with Ursic's endurance, and the armor increase for Iron Fur has been combined with Thorns of Iron. So this Thorns of Iron is in a much better spot up here in the middle section of the tree, as further down below it really feels weird to pick it up, as we'd much rather pick up some talents that enhance our core gameplay in some other way, and Thorns of Iron really is just supposed to be some extra damage that you also deal while mitigating. So this middle section of the tree, especially right below layered main, which feels like a must pick up when you pick up Thorns of Iron anyways, should be a much better spot for Thorns of Iron rather than in the Capstone area. Then Soul of the Forest was redesigned completely. Obviously, as I've mentioned before, generally it has been moved up to this Mangle talent here. And what Soul of the Forest does now is that it makes our Moonfire generate 3 rage whenever we cast it, and 1 rage each time it deals ticking damage. So this will just give us some really nice passive rage generation whenever we have Moonfire on targets. And then to the last 2-point talent node we have Survival of the Fittest, which stayed pretty much exactly the same as it is right now, which is a fairly decent talent to pick up. It now also increases our haste, which is nice, and leads to us picking up the so important After the Wildfire. So currently After the Wildfire is a choice node, but you would never pick Guardian of Elune. It's just a really useless talent that really has no spot in the specialization, and we can remove it. And instead of that, I'd like to see some other off healing in this spot with After the Wildfire. So After the Wildfire obviously requires some coordination and some skill to use. So really what we'd like to see here is an easy option. Something that someone can pick up that doesn't really care about using After the Wildfire correctly. So from the restoration tree, I've picked up Ysera's Gift, which just passively heals us for 3% of our maximum health every 4 seconds, and if you're already at full health, an injured party or raid member will be healed instead of us. And this healing is increased by 8% for each of our active Iron Fur stacks. So this is obviously not as strong as After the Wildfire, but it's a nice, decent, easy alternative that we don't have to care about. We just pick it up and it's a passive constant heal for us and our teammates. As our last talent point on this side, we have Galactic Guardian, which is currently all the way down here, which is quite the bad spot for it, as it's in the middle of the Capstone area. We have to invest a lot of points to get it. We have to pick up this Berserk node that we don't really care about. We have to pick up the Scintillating Moonlight, which is decent, but 2 points invested into this feels really bad. Just to pick up Galactic Guardian, and then we also have to pick up Twin Moonfire in order to really make Galactic Guardian generate double the rage. So we really don't like to see this in the way that it currently is. So we've moved it up. And it's now in the middle section of the tree as pretty much a barrier to entry to some of the right side of the tree, to the galactic magic side of the tree, so really that fits quite well thematically. And I've also redesigned it a bit as us getting like an extra Moonfire cast with increased direct damage and generating more rage. That feels kind of weird and nobody really cares about the proc. In fact, currently you just let the proc itself anyways. So instead of this unintuitive element, it now just has a 5% chance to trigger the free automatic Moonfire. That will generate us the rage from Soul of the Forest, And it will also proc it on another nearby enemy, so this essentially combines with Twin Moonfire, and thus we can also remove Twin Moonfire from the tree, as otherwise we don't really care about it. And most importantly, the final node of this tree, a completely new node. Instead of the Fury of Nature that we see here currently, we now have Den Mother. What this is essentially a PvP talent that we see here. You bolster nearby allies within 15 yards, increasing their max health by 15%. Now, obviously 15% would be a bit much for PvE, so we've reduced this to 10%. And we've added another very important effect, that each stack of Iron Fur reduces magical damage dealt to you by 4%, up to a maximum of 20%, so 5 Iron Fur stacks will give us the maximum magical damage reduction that we can get. This is some really important constant magical damage reduction that we otherwise don't have at all in our mitigation. So this is pretty much a must pick up talent, but it's in a fair spot as it's directly below either Tooth and Claw or Thorns of Iron, which one of those we will want to pick up in pretty much every build, as we want to buff one of our main rage spenders. Either we want to buff Maul with Tooth and Claw, or we want to buff Iron Fur with Thorns of Iron. So after we've buffed one of our main rage spenders, we can now pick up Den Mother, and that leads us further down into the Capstone area of the tree. So let's start with the left side. We see Pulverize, that is pretty much unchanged. I know some bears would like to see the stacks of Thresh being consumed gone. I think it's fine to have it, it's some flavor I guess. But I've increased the damage a lot. As a trade-off of it consuming our Thresh stacks on the target, it now deals much more damage, almost double the damage that it currently does. This is to make it feel better to press as a button, as you can now use it also as a sort of offensive cooldown if you don't really need the defensive benefit of it. As a trade-off, I've reduced the damage reduction a little bit from 35% to 30%. Then Rend and Tear / Untamed Savagery, the choice node that we have in our left side capstone right now, has been moved up, as it makes much more sense to have this node directly below Flashing Claws. So we have all of our really Thresh buffing abilities in one spot. And immediately here you will notice there's a gap. We've removed these talents from the left and right side in the middle and really have focused on just making this one path through. So Pulverize now leads to the middle node, and then the middle node leads outward again. This is the biggest structural change we have in the Guardian tree, and it really opens up this capstone area a lot more so that we can pick up whatever we want from here. In the current design, you're pretty much locked still, and I would really like to see some major change to this capstone area of our tree. So this is what I've done here. This is my version of the major change that I will do. Okay, but let's keep looking at talents. Circle of Life and Death has stayed the same in our tree, also on the same spot. Ursuk's Fury is changed quite a bit. So currently this just gives us a 50% absorb shield for the damage we deal with Thresh and Maul. Now it also works for pulverized damage, and since it's a 2-point node now, we've added some additional offensive benefit, which is to increase the periodic damage of Thresh by 25/50%, so that maybe hopefully our Thresh dot can also feel worthwhile to have on the targets. Then Blood Frenzy, which is here in the current tree, we've moved all the way to the left side, and we've made it generate some more rage on our active Thresh casts, as we don't want to generate all the rage passively on the dot ticks. And it's fair to buff this a bit if we move it to the capstone, which is not that accessible if we go for a right side build. So we want to move this all the way to the left side as our main rage generator for physical builds. Then we have Raise, which is almost unchanged from live. I've reduced the damage of it a little bit since it is quite insane currently, especially in AoE. And what I've also added is this little line here, that it deals double damage against a single target. So Raise is a Capstone talent, it is supposed to be a pure buff, it's supposed to enhance our gameplay, and currently it feels not great to pick up on tyrannical weeks, or especially in raids you don't really want to pick it up, as it really reduces your single target damage when it replaces Maul. And with it dealing double damage when it only hits a single target, it then would even deal a little bit more damage than Maul in single target, which would feel much better. Then here, in the middle section of the Capstone area, we have Ursoc's Guidance and Incarnation of Ursoc. So what you notice here is that Ursoc's Guidance I've actually moved up, and Incarnation is now the Capstone node. This is a much stronger node that we'd really like to pick up. This feels like the ultimate node that we want to pick up, so this should really be a Capstone node in my opinion. And also, maybe we don't even want to really play with Incarnation. Maybe we just want to play with Berserk and don't really focus on Incarnation that much. Then we can just pick up Ursoc's Guidance, reduce our Berserk cooldown with Rage spent, and we don't really even pick up Incarnation. But other than that, Incarnation and Ursoc's Guidance have not changed from what they are currently. What I have done is I've removed the choice node here. Currently Incarnation is on a choice node with Convoke the Spirits, and with this being the choice you won't really ever pick Convoke the Spirits. It's just a non-spell currently, which is unfortunate as it's a very cool spell and we'd like to see it used, but it just won't ever be used if it's on a choice node with Incarnation. Then, on the right side of the tree, right below Galactic Guardian, we now have Scintillating Moonlight again, which is this 2-point node here. We've reduced it to a 1-point node that only reduces our damage by 5% instead of 10%, but it now also makes us deal 10% increased damage. This is to make up for the loss of Fury of Nature, to keep our arcane damage equal to what we have known. Then Rage of the Sleeper is currently a Capstone of the right side, but it really feels like something that all builds want to have, as it's such a strong and cool cooldown. We really want this in a more accessible spot, so we've moved it up. Where it's easy to pick up, you will pick Den Mother anyways, and you just need to spend one more point to pick up Rage of the Sleeper. Then, instead of Twin Moonfire, which also increases our Moonfire damage, but that's shifted to some other nodes now. And instead of Twin Moonfire, which we usually don't really care about, we now get Draught of Deep Focus, which really serves to enhance and focus on our single target damage, so we can pick this up in Tyrannical Weeks or on raid encounters. So Elune's Favored is currently in this spot. It increases our arcane damage by 10% and heals us for 30% of all arcane damage done. While the healing is nice from this, it feels underwhelming. The heal is not really enough, so we'd like to see this increase to 50%, making it similar to Ursoc's Fury again. And what I'd also like to see is to also have this apply for nature damage, as especially with Thorns up here we can deal quite a bit of nature damage, and with Rage of the Sleeper we deal nature damage. Also Brambles up here again deals passive nature damage again. And what you will see further down in the tree, we will also see us maybe being able to use Sunfire, which deals nature damage. So I feel like Elune's Favor should just make us heal from all kinds of magic damage that we do as bears. Then, where Rage of the Sleeper is currently, we see a choice node between Lunar Beam and Convoke the Spirits. Lunar Beam is currently really underwhelming on live, so I've buffed the damage of it a little bit, but mainly I've added another aspect which makes Lunar Beam automatically cast Moonfire on all targets inside the beam at activation, and to refresh the duration of Moonfire each time it deals damage to a target. So on a 1-minute cooldown, we can hop into a pole, we activate Lunar Beam, and we immediately have Moonfire on everything, which gives us an immediate 5% damage reduction on everything, which makes us generate a lot of rage. So this will be a great button to press at the start of a pole. And opposed to that, if we maybe haven't picked up too many Moonfire synergistic talents, we can also opt to go for Convoke the Spirits. Now, Convoke the Spirits here, I've really combined the two Convoke talents. So Convoke baseline is 2-minute cooldown of 16 Druid spells over 4 seconds. But if you pick up this node here, it reduces Convoke's cooldown, as well as the duration and number of spells cast. So this is just a combination of these two talents. It's a 1-minute cooldown, it casts 12 Druid spells over 3 seconds. And we can pick this up whenever we are running, for example, a physical build that doesn't really care that much about Moonfire. We can Convoke and hope to get Iron Furs and Races and whatever. And then lastly, we have a completely new talent. You can see this maybe as a replacement to Moonless Night, which we don't really care about. It's a weird talent. So we remove it, and instead we create a new talent called Off Sun and Moon. This is obviously inspired from the paladins Off Dusk and Dawn. And what this does is it lets us use Sunfire in our bear form. Now this really improves the path we take through our class tree, as finally we get a use from Sunfire, and we might even want to pick up this Sunfire, for example, instead of one of these points. So now we actually get a use out of Sunfire, we deal some AoE damage with it, as well as generate quite some rage from it. Now, this is opposed, obviously, to the rage generation from Blood Frenzy on our physical side of the tree. And because it's called Off Sun and Moon, obviously we also want to increase our Moonfire damage a bit with it. Now, Moonfire damage has been increased previously by Fury of Nature, which we've removed, and also by Twin Moonfire, which we've removed. So the damage should remain fairly equal to what we currently have. Okay, now so that that's out of the way, I would like to go over some build that we can create with this talent tree. So first, I want to show off a physical build. In this physical build, we want to focus on Raise, Mangle, and Pulverize, dealing most of our damage, and obviously Thrash as well. So we pick up Maul, we pick up Gore. For some passive damage reduction, we pick up Brambles, Survival Instincts, as well as Mangle and Gurifer, and Ursuk's Endurance. This is a fairly simple 8-point talent spend that just gives us all the good stuff of the top section of the tree that we want. Now, in the middle section of the tree, we obviously want to pick up Vulnerable Flesh and Tooth and Claw to really buff our race by a lot, as well as Vicious Cycle to buff Race, Mangle, and Thrash. Then we will want to pick up pretty much in any build to pick up Survival of the Fittest and After the Wildfire, just to have some really good off healing. This really adds to our utility that we have, so even in physical builds we want to pick this up anyways. And then to generate some additional rage, we pick up Soul of the Forest and Galactic Guardian. We obviously pick up Flashing Claws for big Thrash and Mangle damage, and then Mother as our must-pick talent. We have one talent point left in the section, so we just put it in layered main to gain some permanent versatility and a small chance for 2 stacks of Iron Fur and some rage refunded. In the Capstone area of the tree, we then pick up Untamed Savagery to really increase the damage of our Thrash by as much as we can. We pick up Ursuk's Fury so that we have a constant absorb shield whenever we deal physical damage. We pick up Pulverize for some big physical single target damage. Pick Blood Frenzy to generate a lot of rage with our Thrash casts, as well as Race, obviously, as our big physical rage spender. And since we will want to press raise a lot for Ursoc's Fury, we really don't want Thorns of Iron, as we want to spend all of our rage on raise to get the best benefit from Ursoc's Fury, and we really only want to keep 1, 2, or 3 Iron first stacks up at a time. Obviously we pick up Incarnation. We get to Incarnation by picking up Rage of the Sleeper. And then we have one more talent point left to spend, so we just put it in Scintillating Moonlight. As we will be spreading Moonfire passively anyways through Galactic Guardian, we might as well just pick up 5% damage reduction permanently. So, that's the physical build. Defensively, it really focuses on Ursoc's Fury. It will deal a lot of damage with Thresh, Raze and Mangle, as well as Pulverize. And Rage will be mainly generated through Moonfire and Thresh. Then to move on to a more magical side build. Here you will notice that we don't pick up Mangle, as we don't really care that much about pressing Mangle always on cooldown like we do on the physical build, so we also don't really care that much about the rage, and we especially don't care about Mangle's damage really a lot. Instead, we pick up Innate Resolve, so that we can pick up some off-healing from Reinvigoration and Dream of Scenarios here, and obviously we get instant Entangling Roots casts as well, which can be nice. Then, as we really don't want to be pressing Maul or Raze, we have to pick up Layered Main and Thorns of Iron. Notice that Thorns of Iron, as opposed to on Life, where it deals physical damage, it deals nature damage in my build. So that will really synergize well with our Elune's Favored, increasing our nature damage and making us heal for all the nature damage we deal. So Thorns of Iron is a really nice choice for us. Obviously, we will want to pick up the Moonfire synergies with Soul of the Forest and Galactic Guardian, as well as After the Wildfire and Survival of the Fittest. Dunmother is a must pick, but we don't pick up Flashing Claws. From the physical side, we just pick Circle of Life and Death, so that our dots tick faster, making Moonfire and Sunfire generate more rage. We pick up Incarnation, because Incarnation is strong. We pick up Rage of the Sleeper, because it's fun and strong. And then we pick up all of our magical synergies. So we pick up Drought of Deep Focus for more single target damage, and also more single target healing, since when our dots deal more damage, they also heal us for more. We pick up Scintillating Moonlight for more arcane damage, as well as the Moonfire permanent damage reduction. We pick up Lunar Beam, as it deals more arcane damage, which then heals us through Elune's Favored, and also to quickly spread Moonfire, so that we can really get our main rage generation going in a pull. And we will obviously want to pick up Off Sun and Moon to really enhance our nature damage dealt and generate a lot of rage with all of our dots. So this build focuses a lot on dots on Moonfire and Sunfire, and really doesn't care a lot about the physical side of the build. We pretty much never press Maul or Raze. Instead, we just press Moonfire, Sunfire, Thresh and Mangle to generate rage, and we spend all of our rage on Thorns of Iron, which makes us really tanky. And for the damage that we don't mitigate, we are instantly healed up again by Elune's Favored. Now you can also craft some sort of hybrid build. So this hybrid build really tries to get the best of both worlds between the two. So we do want to pick up Mangle in this hybrid build, and we will not go for the off-healing with Innate Resolve here. So this is the same as in the physical build. Then in the middle section of the tree, we will want to pick up our huge physical damage talents with Tooth and Claw, Vicious Cycle and Flashing Claws. We obviously want to pick up Dunmother. And on the right side, we obviously want Survival of the Fittest and After the Wildfire again. Now, a quick note on this at this point is I will never pick Ysera's Gift in a build really. It's supposed to be an easy mode of After the Wildfire, so everybody can pick up Ysera's Gift if they prefer it over the more active After the Wildfire. But really for the purpose of creating builds, I will focus on After the Wildfire. But yeah, back to our hybrid build. We would also really like to spread Moonfire everywhere to generate a lot of rage through Soul of the Forest. And now in our Capstone area it gets really interesting, as we will be picking up Rend and Tear, which gives us a permanent 6% damage reduction and damage increased on all targets in the pool, which is great. We have Circle of Life and Death, giving us quicker damage over time effects so that we can generate more rage through Moonfire and Sunfire. We do pick up Raze, which we get access to through Circle of Life and Death, so that we can really use Vicious Cycle a lot and deal quite a lot of physical damage. But we won't have the points to pick up Urso's Fury in this build. Then we obviously want NoCarn because it's strong. We do want Scintillating Moonlight, as it gives us another 5% permanent damage reduction, so between Scintillating Moonlight and Rend and Tear, that's a lot of passive damage reduction that we just have all the time. We want to pick up Drought of Deep Focus to increase our single target damage a bit, and also as a main way to get to Off Sun and Moon, since we won't have the points to invest into Elune's Favored. And we also want to pick Rage of the Sleeper, because it's fun and strong, but also to get to Lunar Beam, again as a way to apply Moonfire quickly to everything in the pool. Then one more NoCarn based build is a build that really focuses on off-healing. So obviously we want to pick up Innate Resolve, as we are planning to off-heal with this build. But that means that we have to skip picking one of these two talents, Mangle or Gorifer. In this build I've chosen to go with Mangle instead of Gorifer, as it generates more rage. And we want to generate a lot of rage in this build to really get the maximum After the Wildfire procs that we can possibly get. Other than that, this top area is fairly standard. We obviously pick up Reinvigoration and Dream of Scenarios. Then we pick up Layered Mane and Thorns of Iron. This is because we won't be pressing Raze in this build, so we really want to buff our Iron Fur to be as useful as possible. Then, as I mentioned, we want to pick up the maximum amount of rage, so we pick up Soul of the Forest and Galactic Guardian. And obviously for off-healing we will want After the Wildfire. Obviously we pick up Den Mother. But other than that, from the left side, we only pick up Circle of Life and Death for more rage, basically, through our dots. And then, very interestingly, we go all the way down to the bottom here to pick up Blood Frenzy to generate a lot of rage through Thresh, even though we don't have a lot of Thresh synergy otherwise. So for that, we have to go through Pulverize, which we don't really care about, but we also don't really have the points to invest into Urso's Fury. So we go Pulverize and Blood Frenzy, which we have access through Dream of Scenarios here. Then we want to pick up NoCarn, because it's strong. And then on the right side, again, we just want to focus on the maximum amount of rage generated, so we pick up Scintillating Moonlight to get to Elune's Favored. Now Elune's Favored will be very strong for us, as we have a lot of nature damage through Thorns of Iron, and also since we picked up Thorns here. And obviously we will be having Moonfire and Sunfire on everything in the pool. So since we picked up Elune's Favored, we can then also pick up Off Sun and Moon, as well as Lunar Beam to just spread Moonfire everywhere. So this will be a fairly defensive build that doesn't deal as much damage as the 3 builds that I had previously. But what it does is heal a ton through After the Wildfire and through all the Innate Resolve procs. It might even enable an off-healing style build similar to what Smog is doing in High Keys, where he's tanking as a paladin and has 4 DPS. That also usually provides some off-healing like Shadow Priests and Enhancement Shamans and Feral Druids. So with this build, maybe Druid could do the same thing, which would be really cool to see. And lastly, as we have some NoCarn lovers in the Druid Discord, here's a build that you can run without Incarnation. Now obviously you have a lot of choices in this sort of build, what you want to pick up instead of NoCarn, so this is just one variation of what you could do. So fairly standard. Here in the top section I've picked up pretty much everything except for Berserk, since we don't want to be running Berserk. Then here, really we want to enhance both sides of physical and magical as much as we can, since we are not going to be running Incarnation. So we will want to be picking up Rays, as well as all of the Rays synergy here with Tooth and Claw, Vicious Cycle, Flashing Claws. We pick up Untamed Savagery and Ursuk's Fury to have a constant absorb shield on us, making us really tanky. And we have a lot of rage generated through Blood Frenzy. But we actually don't pick up Soul of the Forest and Galactic Guardian in this build. Instead of that, we will be relying more on Sunfire to generate rage for us rather than Moonfire. So we will really not be pressing Moonfire a whole lot in this build. On single targets, since we do have Draught of Deep Focus, we can press it, but as soon as we have 2 targets, we usually don't want to press Moonfire. Then we have Rage of the Sleeper in this build, as well as Convoke the Spirits. Since we don't really care about Moonfire in this build, we don't really care about Lunar Beam, so we pick up Convoke, since it's a fun and decently strong spell. And this build should deal quite a bit of damage, it's quite consistent, and it doesn't rely on Berserk or Incarnation at all. So that's it for today. I hope Blizzard can maybe take some inspiration from my ideas. I obviously wasn't able to playtest this, so I don't know if the spec would be broken if it was implemented exactly as I suggested. But hey, after such a rough season, don't we deserve some love? Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Let me know in the comments what you think of my ideas, or if you have any ideas yourself. If you like the video, also consider to like, share and subscribe, it would mean a lot to me. Thank you and see you all next time.